James Francis McHugh was born at Gordon near Ballarat in 1888. He completed his senior schooling at St Pat's Ballarat and studied for the priesthood at St Patrick's Seminary at Manly in New South Wales. He was ordained in 1912. After several postings in the Melbourne diocese, including parish priest at Mansfield, he was appointed parish priest at Kilmore, where he served for 14 years until 1942. Father McHugh, from all accounts, was very devout and a great friend of Assumption College and St Joseph's College alike. Outside of his pastoral duties, he had many interests. He was a keen gardener, a keen tennis player, and a skillful golfer. He loved the horse races and was, at one time, president of St Pat's Racing Club. Around 1937, he acquired a 16mm movie camera, and over the next 3 years, these interests were reflected in the film shot in and around Kilmore. During these 3 years, Father McHugh had 3 successive assistant priests: Father Tim Flynn, Michael O'Sullivan, and John Tressida. All 3 feature in the film clips. When Father McHugh left Kilmore in 1942 for his next parish appointment in the Melbourne suburb of Armidale, the film clips disappeared, only to resurface in 1988 when the retiring parish priest Monsignor Morrison was cleaning out a cupboard in the presbytery. He passed them into the care of the Kilmore Historical Society, who organised the films to be joined together into a usable or screenable form. But being celluloid-based, the films were fragile, so the Historical Society organised a film laboratory to copy the films onto video. The video was subsequently digitised onto a disc in 2012. The films were sent to the National Film and Sound Archives in Canberra for safekeeping. 7 years after his Armidale appointment, Father McHugh died suddenly of a mystery illness at the age of 61. He used German-made Agfa film, which might explain why his Kilmore films cut out with the unavailability of film with the onset of war in late 1939. Archbishop Dr. Daniel Mannix had an affinity for Kilmore and a Eucharistic festival. The occasion was the 10th of December 1937. An arch had been erected over the main gate at St Patrick's, and a guard of honour was formed by the men of the various church groups and the boys from Assumption College. Dr. Mannix began the services with the big confirmation service of 124 children and 25 adults. Local parish identities J.J. Ryan and Delia Morrissey were the appointed sponsors. The Kilmore Free Press reported that Dr. Mannix sought a pledge from the children to abstain from intoxicating liquor until they'd reached their 25th year. Following the confirmation, the Eucharistic procession went from St Pat's Church to the adjoining Assumption College. Dr. Mannix insisted that Eucharistic festivals were all about demonstrating one's faith in public. The parade was led by the Children of Mary and followed by the women of the Sacred Heart Sodality, the Assumption College students, the men of the parish representing the Holy Name Society, and the local Hibernian branch. Then came the flower girls, who strew rose petals ahead of the Archbishop, who was carrying the monstrance. The procession canopy was carried by 4 Marist brothers. To quote the Free Press, an altar had been erected at the main entrance of Assumption College, and people knelt in adoration on the lawns amongst the beautiful greenery of the sunlit grounds. A picturesque scene was portrayed, and an awe of silence fell over the throng when His Grace raised the sacred host on high during benediction. The festival closed with a rousing rendition of Faith of Our Fathers. A subsequent Eucharistic festival was held in 1938, but without the presence of the Archbishop, lacked the pageantry of the 1937 event. Livestock were also featured on the McHugh films. Here Tony DeCampo has one of the local cockatoos under control. Other cockatoos are encouraged by younger parishioners who appreciated the free feeds. The same applies to kittens. Included among the minders were the Harrington and Clancy girls. Although it appears that the neighbouring Catanack cattle were not all that welcome. Note the Kilmore railway station in the background. Sunday morning Mass. Who needed CTC cameras when you had Father McHugh's camera to film parishioners going to Mass on Sunday? Note the courtesy of raising one's hat. Among the churchgoers were 3 nuns with Reverend Mother Sister Mary Gertrude in the centre. Other identities include the 4 Clark boys from Tantarabu, Ed, Paddy, Jim and Jack. We also have a great family shot of John and Bridget Kelly with children Pat, Bernadette, Joan and Mary. A younger sister, 1-year-old Sheila, or now Sheila Stute, said she could have been in the picture, but she was left asleep in the car. Note the sparsity of houses in the background compared to Kilmore of today. Christmas gatherings were a regular event for St Pat's, complete with Santa Claus and the children. This 1938 gathering was at St Joseph's Convent. I think the long-time Santa Claus double was Victor Digger Clark. Father McHugh loved the horse races. Here he covers the January 1938 summer meeting, including the arrival at the Kilmore railway station of the Melbourne-based horses, trainers, bookmakers, jockeys, strappers and punters. To attract the horses from Melbourne, the Kilmore Turf Club provided freight assistance on a sponsored train. On arrival, the horses and connections had to trek the 1.5 miles to the Kilmore racecourse. You may have noticed that the station master overseeing the arrivals was local identity Tim Layden. Meetings in those days consisted of about 6 races, including a hurdle event which preceded the 5 flat races. Prize money per race ranged from £10 to £30 per race, or into today's currency, about $1,000 to $3,000. Note that prior to 1944, the finish line and the grandstand, stables and mounting yard were on the northeast corner of the racetrack. The grandstand, finish line and stabling were transferred to west of the track in the mid-1940s. Kilmore's Catholic Cemetery is a private cemetery which is administered by the church and long maintained by volunteers. Father McHugh has filmed one of the working bees. Without the aid of today's modern mowers, much of the grass and weeds are kept in check with shovels. Although, as you see in the later scene, there is an easier way by burning the grass. Among those at the working bee is a young lad in an Assumption College cap, Kevin Ryan. There was great excitement in Kilmore when the St Pat's basketball team won the A-grade premiership in the Victorian Catholic Basketball Association. The team of 7 girls, Captain Madge Katanak, Eileen Demerick, Pauline Brosnan, Molly Cherry, Rita Clancy, Rita Davies, and Bernice Morgan won the honours by 1 point from previous title holders South Melbourne. The match was played at North Fitzroy. Kilmore was the sole country team in a competition of 44 teams. Father McHugh managed to capture the teams practising and their eventual celebrations. Here we see the team piling into Hugh Hamilton's car. Spotted in the footage were Fred Tully and Len Moore holding the sign. And the team's 2 greatest supporters were local state school headmaster Matt Corcoran and Brother Gonzalez. Monday, the 10th of January 1938, was a black day for Kilmore East farmers, with 2 grass fires which destroyed over 2,000 acres of grassland, fencing and 150 sheep. According to the Kilmore Free Press report, the first fire began on George Hitchcock's land but was soon brought under control. Hardly had the firefighters ceased operations when the bell was again ringing. The suspected cause was ash from a Melbourne-bound passenger steam train. This fire burnt the McManus and Frayne properties before jumping into Jack Hamilton's farm, currently the Donovan farm. Father McHugh's film shows just how you fought fires in those days with wet bags and tree branches. Spotted among the firefighters were several of the local Morris brothers, Christopher, Eugene and Patricius. You can spot the brothers as they weren't wearing farm hats. Family Day picnics and sports gatherings were high among Father McHugh's priorities, and none was more evident than St Patrick's Parish Jubilee Picnic in March 1939, held at the Kilmore Racecourse. You may spot Sheila and Bill Harrington and Charlie Dillon in suit and hat. Being a steward at the Kilmore horse race, he was more than capable of taking charge of running the events at the picnic. 1937 was to be a big year for Kilmore as it planned to celebrate the town's centenary, being 100 years since Charles Bonney, Joseph Horden and Charles Ebden overlanded from New South Wales to set up camp in the area which was to become Kilmore. But because of a statewide outbreak of polio, the 1937 celebrations were postponed until a year later in November 1938. The week-long celebrations, including concerts, 2 street parades, and concluded with the Kilmore Agricultural Show at what is now the J.J. Clancy Recreation Reserve. Father McHugh managed to capture the street procession, which included the Army Band and Assumption College students marching to the showgrounds. Included among the activities captured on film at the show included wheelbarrow races, tug-of-war contests, and basketball matches. You might be able to catch one local identity, Barry Skean, walking beside the bagpiper. Father McHugh was a keen golfer and a committee member of the Kilmore Golf Club. Here he captures some of the action in a men's and ladies' event in October 1939. Among the competitors on this day were Charles Osborne, George Hudson, Russell and Colin Cuthbertson, Colin McNabb, Frank DeMarick, May Ryan, and Sheila Harrington. For those familiar with the layout of today's Kilmore Golf Course, the first tee was just outside the old golf clubhouse, what is now the 13th tee. And the sand scrape number 8 hole in front of the clubhouse is now gone and is part of today's 16th fairway. Father McHugh loved a sports social day. This church family event, held on the Kilmore cricket ground, was for both children and the grown-ups. The events included such things as the Siamese race, a baseball match using tennis rackets, a cricket match, and even a sheaf toss. Tennis was one of Father McHugh's favourite sports, so much so that he was responsible for building the 2 tennis courts plus a pavilion on the north side of St Pat's Presbytery. The site is now occupied by St Pat's School car park and 2 basketball courts. Spotted arriving at the courts were Kevin and Rita Clancy, among the players on the court were Dan Clancy, Brendan Butler, Frank DeMarick, Sheila Clancy, Fred Tully and Lynn Moore. Saturday, November the 20th, 1937, was supposed to be a red-letter day for Kilmore's centenary celebrations. But because of the polio epidemic, the celebrations were postponed until 1938. However, that couldn't stop the visit of the Victorian Governor, Lord Huntingfield, who made the most of a full day, culminating with the opening of the Kilmore Show. Prior to that, he visited St Joseph's Convent, where he was accompanied by the Shire President James Ryan and local identities J.J. Ryan, Matt Corcoran and Reg Hoban. He was introduced by Mother Superior, Sister Mary Gertrude. Lord Huntingfield then visited Assumption College, where he was introduced to the students by Assumption Principal Brother Hilary. In his address to the students, Lord Huntingfield, as reported by Kilmore Free Press, asked them to be a credit to their superiors, be a credit to Victoria, the Commonwealth of Australia, and the great British Empire, of which we're all members and of which we should all be proud. In Kilmore's main street, Father McHugh attempted to capture several of the local identities. Note the courtesy of tipping the hat. Spotted in the street were Kath Ryan, Red Line garage operator Leon Brabbett, taxi proprietor Elf Katanak, Delia and Joe Morrissey, Ken Moore, Mary Cushion, grocer Claude McConville, and Andy Cook. Father McHugh spent plenty of time filming at Assumption College, so it was fitting that he visited St Joseph's Convent to film the boarders and the day students alike. Note the school landscape is a lot more open then than today's following the construction of the Kilmore International School. The convent closed as a school in 1972 and the nuns vacated the convent in 1975. Many of the girls featured here are in the St Pat's basketball team and earlier in the St Pat's picnic day. Assumption College was a favourite haunt for Father McHugh, where he enjoyed mixing with the brothers and the students past and present. He had a huge influence in recruiting Assumption students to the priesthood. It was reported that in 1938, 20 ex-Assumption students were studying for the priesthood at Werribee. Here, Fathers McHugh, Michael O'Sullivan and Tim Flynn are seen with the 4 of the ACK seminarians. One of the highlights of Father McHugh films was the bearded 85-year-old Brother Austin. Brother Austin came to Kilmore in 1893 to help set up the Marist Brothers at the then St Patrick's Boys' School on White Street in Kilmore. Here we see Brother Austin congratulating students Kevin McVeigh and Michael Hellinan, who are about to join the Marist Novitiate Training College at Mittagong in New South Wales. One of Kilmore's favourite characters and long-time 21-year fixture at Assumption College was Brother Gonzalez. When he wasn't teaching the junior classes, he was taking control of building constructions. The main oval was among one of his many works. Brothers filmed in this gathering included Brothers Christopher, Patricius, Eugene and William. We also see Brother Austin turning a sod for another ACK extension. Brothers Austin, Gonzalez and William were honoured with ACK house names. The fourth member, Brother Sebastian, was filmed holding a canopy pole in the Eucharistic parade. And in another shot, we see Brother Austin and Brother Patricius. Tiger wars seem to be the sport of choice in Kilmore. This time it seems to be a district sports carnival, complete with local constabulary and army personnel. You may spot on the rope the bespectacled Jack Clancy, for who the J.J. Clancy Recreation Reserve is named. Another Father McHugh social gatherings at the tennis court pavilion. Plenty of Callies, Harringtons, Lows, Butlers, Ryans and Clancys spotted in the gathering. Despite an end to World War I hostilities, there remained an uneasy peace, particularly in the Pacific region, where the likes of Britain and Australia were suspicious of Japan's intentions. Australia's military commanders described Japan as Australia's only potential and probable enemy. Australian governments recognised the threat but lacked the will and resources to maintain its armed forces. It wasn't until 1937, with the European war imminent, that the Lyons government lifted its defence expenditure, including recruitment for a home-based militia. By November 1938, the government was advertising for recruits. Kilmore's Free Press carried an advertisement seeking able-bodied men for a muster in January. 56 from Kilmore, Wallen, Darrawheat and Pylong answered the call and were issued uniforms, hats and boots. The first real camp for the Kilmore Company of the 58th Battalion was held in Mornington in January 1939. For the next 10 months they met fortnightly in the Kilmore Mechanics Hall and ran training exercises at the Kilmore Racecourse. In October 1939, 1 month after the outbreak of hostilities in Europe, the Kilmore Company assembled at the Kilmore East Railway Station before taking the train to Seymour for a fortnight in training camp with the full 58th Battalion at Seymour. Assistant Parish Priest John Tressida followed the militia to Seymour, where he accepted a post as an army chaplain. We have listed the members of the militia. This was the last gathering of the Kilmore militia. The soldiers were given the option of enlisting for further training and overseas duty. Some opted out and some were excluded because of their employment in essential industries and services. 25 enlisted and saw active service. 2 of these enlistees, Kilmore poultry farmer Dick Cam and his son Richard, paid the ultimate sacrifice.